This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So it looks like Sergio Perez could have left Red Bull. I had two opportunities to change teams, but he ultimately chose to stay. Okay, Checo, so spill the beans then, come on, tell us. Who are they? Because as things stand, especially after Liam Lawson's absolutely cracking performance at Austin, those two teams may have been the two lifelines that will keep Checo in this sport beyond 2024. Because right now it's not looking great for him, is it? My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. So of the 9 teams available to Checo, we can write off a bunch straight away, of course. Racing Bull's the Red Bull Junior team. Of course, his employers are the same. If Christian Helmut wanted him in that sister car, it would already have been done. Don't forget, all of the Red Bull drivers, be that Red Bull Racing or VCarb or whatever, they're all contracted to Red Bull GmbH and then loaned out to the teams, hence why they're able to move things around so easily. McLaren have a very good present and future with Lando and Oscar. Ferrari have a long-term contract with Charles Leclerc and have just signed Lewis Hamilton. He's the only guy who possibly could have usurped Carlos Sainz, who's been a fantastic teammate to Charles in that time. So there's no way Perez is getting in at Ferrari. Aston Martin were the ones who kicked him to the curb unfairly, as far as I'm concerned, in favour of Sebastian Vettel, a big high-profile signing for when it rebranded from Racing Point to Aston Martin. Do I see Checo returning to replace Fernando? No, Fernando's there as a high-profile signing. They might even get Max. And Mercedes, I mean, look, if they felt Andrea Kimi Antonelli wasn't ready for that seat, they had options in Albon, Ocon, Schumacher. Fernando Alonso was linked at one stage to that seat. Carlos Sainz as well, of course. They're not signing Checo at Mercedes. That's no. So that leaves 4 teams, the 4 weakest teams in Formula 1. So let's weigh up the merit of Checo at each of these teams, the pros and the cons, in no particular order. I'm wearing blue. Let's start with Williams. Alex Albon was punished by that Red Bull in 2020, just like Checo has been ever since. Yet, Alex Albon has seemingly thrived in that Williams. I know as of late, Franco has been very close, and that's a topic for another day. That's a topic kind of for my last video, really. But all in all, in Alex's time at Williams, he's done a very good job. Does that indicate that they are both limited by the same car characteristics within that Red Bull, but therefore could also both benefit from the same car characteristics in a Williams? Maybe, right? Alex has shown he's no schmuck, right? He's recovered his stock levels. I know they're taking a little bit of hit at the minute, but ultimately he's recovered them far from where they were at the end of 2020 when Checo rightfully replaced him at Red Bull. That Grove environment's working for Alex. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that Grove environment would work very well for Checo as well and get a better version out of him than what we're seeing at Red Bull Racing. And then, of course, there's the money that Checo brings, okay? That's well documented, all of the sponsors from Latin America that he brings. And as teams go who could do with the cash, Williams fundamentally are years behind after many a decade of a lack of investment within that team. I mean, Williams is still the second most successful Formula 1 team of all time when it comes to Constructors' Championships. Anyway, yet as of late, they've been backmarkers, and James Vowles has been very candid about the operational deficits they have relative to his old team at Mercedes anyway. And look, Dorilton has put their hand in their pocket and invested big time in that team and are putting them on that path. The financial support that Checo would bring ultimately is going to pay dividends more so relative for Williams than a team like Red Bull, who are not struggling financially in any way, shape or form. It is the money that is keeping Checo in that Red Bull seat, a team that doesn't even need the money. Imagine how valuable that would be to a team like Williams that really does. And talking of value, I think Squarespace delivers great bang for your buck value if you want to build your very own website, your very own beautiful online home. And Squarespace keep innovating. They've just introduced design intelligence, combining 2 decades of industry-landed design expertise with cutting-edge AI technology to unlock your strongest creative potential. It's yet another way Squarespace allows you to build a beautiful, personalized website, whether you're needing a portfolio, your own online business, or a blog. Whatever you want, Squarespace has got your back. And best of all, it's free to try, right? Nothing to lose. It's only when you want to publish your finished website live to the world that you have to pay anything, and when that time inevitably comes around, head to squarespace.com/Tommo'S to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. As for cons, look, It would have been a seat to replace Logan, of course, and go alongside Alex. Yet they've ended up with Carlos Sainz, who, as much as I think Checo isn't as bad as he's been made to look in this Red Bull, Carlos is still better than Checo, I believe, in pretty much every facet. He's more capable, he's more reliable, he's more adaptable. I think he's driven Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, and is now going into a Williams. And I think he's been quick in everything, bar, it wasn't great in Renault, to be fair to Carlos. Checo, on the other hand, yes, he started at Sauber a long time ago and did a very good job and got that McLaren call-up, right? He got that opportunity, took it, but it didn't really work for him. And then he spent most of his career at one team, at Force India, where he did very well. He helped that team punch above their weight for a long time, but he hasn't had that variety of experience. And I think that's worked against him going into this Red Bull, because he was used to a very specific way of extracting performance from that Force India. To be fair, remember Force India used to have a high rate car, and then they went to the Mercedes clone, and Checo was rapid in that as well. So it's not like he's completely incapable of driving anything other than one specific type of car. It's just he can't drive the Red Bull. And then I think there is a question of ambition. Right, I think Williams have made a lot of statements. James Vowles has done a lot of talking of 2026 and beyond. That's all he cares about. That's the focus. That's the aim. DeRuyter want to invest in. They're building this team up. Want to make Williams great again. And you've got Albon, a driver who, again, I think still very much splits opinion. He's not that big high-profile name to lead a team to the top. Even I would say that. And I think bringing Checo in alongside him, it would just stink of a bit of a cash grab, given how bad Checo's form has been and how low his stock is right now. I mean, they've essentially got the Red Bull rejects, which is, it's an oversimplistic way and an unfair way of putting it, but full well that would be, if they signed Checo alongside Alex, that would be the optics that you'd see going around Twitter all day, right? Whereas Carlos Sainz, bringing him in is such a coup. Everyone's like, well, Carlos deserves better than Williams, but you know what? They're the ones who convinced him to join them over a Audi Works deal. And the way James Vowles made out the team internally reacted to them signing Carlos Sainz was like they were doing cartwheels and jumping around the factory, which, look, maybe overplayed it a little bit, but what I would say is that it does make a difference, I think, to the individuals within Williams. Getting a signing like Carlos Sainz through the door is going to inspire more confidence and more gas and more energy and more like, oh my God, we actually have a driver here who's proven in form in these ground effect cars right now, can do it, versus someone like Checo who isn't proven in these ground effect cars. He's bringing money in, but it doesn't showcase the same ambition, does it? Like a Carlos Sainz, it just doesn't. Now for Haas, of course, outside of Williams, they are the weakest team when it comes to facility and team size, right? I mean, Toyota are just getting this bloody wind tunnel simulator, their first ever simulator at Haas, which is crazy. So all the financial points I made about Williams apply to Haas. I guess the main difference is you've got an owner in Gene Haas who doesn't really want to put any more money into the team, whereas DeRuyter are prepared to invest. Yet Gene still wants to move up the grids, maybe not as aggressively as William does. He doesn't have the ambition of James Vowles. He's not going to achieve that without some investment. I think Aokamatsu's doing a great job of maximising the potential of what Haas have right now. But if they want to start, trickling into the podiums and start knocking on the door of that top four, they are going to need more money. And if Gene isn't going to put his hands in his pocket, then put your hands in Checo's sponsors' pockets. Bringing Checo in alongside brokering this Toyota deal, I think the ingredients would be there to push this team in a direction that works. Especially as, Checo knows how to succeed in a thrifty team. He did it for years at Force India. That environment where it's not as bloated and built out as a Red Bull Racing or a Mercedes or a McLaren or whatever. In its current guise, this is the smallest team and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future, especially with Hulk and Magnussen going out the door as well. All of that experience leaving, bringing someone in who knows how to drive for a small team and succeed for a small team, and has the experience that Checo does. Checo's not a mug. I mean, he had 3 seasons alongside Nico Hülkenberg at Force India and outscored him in 2 of those 3 seasons. And Nico Hülkenberg's an absolute don, right? Whose stock is sky high at the minute. If you're signing Checo alongside Ollie Behrman, I think that's a really good benchmark for Ollie, a driver with, again, a lot of experience for him to go up against and see what he can do. I know Checo isn't the most known quantity right now, but looking at his CV, come on again, I think it is the Red Bull environment that's particularly working against him. Con-wise, I guess, if you're going to reunite Perez and Ocon and have Perez instead of Behrman, which I don't think was ever going to happen, but if... no. You could also maybe say Checo's crash happiness at Red Bull could be seen as maybe an issue for Haas, given their relatively low budget, right? They don't have the massive overheads. But also I do think that is more to do with Checo driving a car that just fundamentally doesn't work for him and his style. So it could kind of go either way, I think. Look, of course, if he went back to Sauber, he would be going back to where it all began, and it very much worked well for him, didn't it, at the start of his career? He really did impress. I know it was a long time ago, and I know the increase in influence of Audi is going to change that team, but I think that does have to count for something, right? 2011 and 12 in a pretty midfield Sauber, a few podiums in that second season, almost won it all in Malaysia, but made his mistake late on, and Fernando took the dub. If that environment worked for him then there's a possibility it could work for him now. Also, if you were going to sign him for Sauber, you'd be putting him alongside Nico Hülkenberg, making probably the most experienced driver lineup on the grid. And again, they were teammates in 14, 15 and 16, and Checo, you know, scored more points than him 2 seasons to 1. With Nico driving so well at the minute, if we can get Checo back to that place where he's going toe-to-toe with Nico Hülkenberg and possibly outracing him and possibly outscoring him. I mean, I don't think he ever really outqualified Nico Hülkenberg, but in the races he'd do the job. I mean, that would be phenomenal, a phenomenal base to build on for Audi, especially considering that Sauber team's nowhere at the minute, right? So the experience of these two would surely pay dividends. As for the cons, well, look, again, money's never a bad thing. In this context anyway. Audi don't need it like Williams and Haas do. So the sponsorship that Checo brings in isn't surely going to be as big of a motivating factor, especially now that Audi are taking 100% stake in that team, not just a 75% stake anymore. However, you know, VW Group are struggling at the minute. F1's a huge marketing expense. That's what it's there to do. It's there to sell more motor vehicles on the road. And if it can pay for itself, then VW going to be happy about that. It goes one or two ways, but they still don't need the money quite like Haas and Williams do, right? They're still the VW Group. They still have billions in the coffers that they can throw at a project like this and it be okay. As long as it works out, as long as the Audi are not trash. Stop! If you got to this point in the video, 12.50, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to support what I do, head on over to my Patreon. 3 tiers available, 1 here on YouTube, 2 over on Patreon. Love you a long time. Back to the video. But you know, maybe these poor forecasts for VW Group is part of the reason why they lost patience with Andreas Seidel and let him go. I don't know. I mean, Bonotto, as long as he's not managing and he's focusing on the car development and as CTO, that should be the case. With Wheatley leading up the actual team management, I'm feeling much more positive about Audi than I was maybe 6 months ago. Sauber have had the facilities for a long time, but never the budget to fully exploit it. Would Checo's money help? Sure, but it's Audi. Come on. But then secondary to that, and this is probably even a bigger point than the same point I made for Williams, is the ambition argument, right? I mean, Nico Hülkenberg's a German driver driving for a German marquee, and he's never been on the podium. I think he's a fantastic driver. He's not that big high-profile name. It's not like, you know, when Aston Martin signed Vettel for their first season in F1. That was as much about Seb's name as it was about anything else. Because Nico's driving so well, because Nico's got so much experience, signing Checo, I think, would feel like more of a cash grab, that Audi just don't want to put money into this team and don't want to take it seriously. They'd rather get Checo sponsors to pay for it because they've already got Hülkenberg as an experienced guy. Go crazy with the second seat. Go with someone left field. Go with a Franco Colapinto or a Gabriel Bortoleto or a Tao Porchero or a Zane Maloney, you know. Push the boat out and try something a bit different because you have Nico as that solid foundation, and then you can build someone up alongside him, you know, rather than just going for a Checo who's been around for a long time, is really low stock at the minute and brings in money. And then Alpine, look, every team's got their own financial position, unique to them. Alpine is one of cost cutting as of late, right? They're cutting Viry-Châtillon, the engine building facility in France. They will no longer be providing their own PUs. They will turn to a Mercedes customer deal from 2026 onwards. They've sold off a bunch of ownership to various consortiums. You're seeing, you know, all these movies, like Indiana Jones most recently, promos on the car, the Deadpool one. Everything points to this team being geared up to a sale. You know, they've turned it into a customer team and they're selling off shares, and they've still got the Alpine logo on the back, but they're still not selling any cars. Like, I don't know. Renault clearly don't want to put any more money into this team than they absolutely have to. Otherwise, why wouldn't they just do 100% ownership like Audi are trying to do and go full in on the Renault Alpine branding? Have that beautiful blue to white to red livery. Instead, they've got this BWT pink for a water company, and then they're just chucking loads around. It's literally just becoming like a cookie cutter F1 manager, make your own team. And Renault have always had this like idea, this super naive idea that they can achieve success in 100 races or whatever by spending less than the rest. It doesn't work like that. You do need to invest the bag to get the results, and especially if you've got this split team in Enstone and Viry, it was always up against it, and they had their moments, but ultimately this team, Renault don't want to put any more money into it. They're probably going to sell it. And Checo bringing his sponsor money will just help pay for it, so Renault don't have to. It's just such a shame. I honestly, above all else, I feel for the staff. I feel for the staff at Viry. I feel for the staff at Enstone. I think that team's been through the ringer over the years. It's just a mess. But then also bringing in Perez alongside Pierre Gasly, you've got two drivers with a lot of experience. Again, two ex-Red Bull, who didn't work out in that top team. I don't know, you know what? Checo versus Gasly. Who would come out in top in qualifying in an Alpine? Checo versus Gasly. And look, the main, I think, con for Alpine in signing Checo, when you've got like a Jack Doohan waiting there, when you've got Mick Schumacher potentially knocking on the door, Victor Martin as well in Formula 2, you are kind of showcasing that you're not prepared to, you know, give opportunities to your youngsters. I know they wanted to give the opportunity to Piastri, but they faffed around with that too much and then they let him go. Bringing in Checo would definitely undermine their junior program. I think part of what is putting Williams in a strong position right now is they gave Logan the opportunity. They've now given Franco the opportunity. Any young driver who's evaluating potential options for junior academies, surely they're going to look on Williams more favourably than Alpine, because they can see, well, look, there's proven steps to get to the top. That used to be the case with the Red Bull. Maybe not so much now. Williams have put themselves in a strong position by doing that. I don't think Sauber and Aston Martin have done themselves any favours. Teo Pourchaire won F2 and has sat on the sidelines. Felipe Drogovic done the exact same thing. Both sat on the sidelines at Aston Martin and Sauber respectively. It's not going to help them cultivate that next generation of talent. If I had to put money on it, I would say I reckon Haas offered him a contract alongside Ollie Behrman before they signed Esteban Ocon. I reckon Alpine also offered him a contract to go alongside Pierre Gasly. That's the way I see it. But let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Which two teams do you think wanted Checo? My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-ta.